say thank you to everybody who is joining us, from the panelists to the people coming in to listen to these students and their stories. I'm just going to go down from what I see from my right. So I just want you guys to introduce yourselves, tell us where you are as far as a part of the Hudson community, and your name. So I see Sam. If you could go first, please.
Okay. Hi, I'm Sam. I'm non-binary and I use they them pronouns. And I am currently a English major here at the college, and it is my last semester before I receive my associate's degree. And I want to be in the education field and be a teacher, and make more safe spaces for people like myself and others.
All right. Next up would be CC. If you could just introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Cece. I am the president of the LGBTQIA Club. I am a trans man. My pronouns are he and they. I'm an English major. This is also my last semester before I graduate with my associates and transfer out. And I'm glad to be here.
Next up, the wonderful Stev.
Hi, trying to do the little spacebar thing to temporarily unmute. My name is Stev. I actually graduated a few semesters ago. I currently work for the Academic Support Service department, and I am trans feminine non-binary. So my preferred pronouns are she, her, and they and them.
Thank you. And last but not least, the wonderful Oliver.
Hey everybody, my name is Oliver. This is my third semester here at the college. I'm currently the treasurer. My apologies for the background noise. I'm the treasurer for the Human Services Club. My pronouns are he, him.
All right. Thank you everyone for introducing yourselves. Again, this is an opportunity for you to talk about your stories and the things that you've experienced here at Hudson. While I do have questions that I want to ask, I want to just open the floor for any of you to just talk about what your time here at Hudson has been like. What are some notable details that you want to share with the people joining us here today?
Girls, I need you guys to be quiet, okay?
I guess we could start. I don't know about anybody else, but my experience has been kind of 50-50, really, because you get a lot of different kinds of people. Since the college is so big, it's been mostly positive with like administration and stuff like that, but I have had the few times where I've gotten the occasional weird look or the question of I'll tell somebody, I was like, oh yeah, like I use they them, but sometimes I use he him pronouns, and they'll look at me and they'll be like, are you sure? Like I don't know myself. So that's, I guess a love that's an interesting experience.
I'll go next. My experience at the college has been pretty satisfactory for the most part before we went virtual and digital. I entered the college pretty much masculine presenting, and during my social and both medical transition, I was either a student or an employee at the time. And yeah, I mean, I love the department I work for. I love the on-campus. Sorry, I just came back from the dentist, so like brain fog. I love the on-campus environment. I don't usually get like strange looks, and even if I do, I love the attention. I like being looked at. So yeah. overall, as both a student and an employee in the midst of my transition, things have been fairly decent. No one, I've never felt really like purposefully disrespected. Um, yeah.
I would say for me, my experience is a bit different from everyone else's because at the school, I'm still kind of semi in the closet. Um, to the point where that today I think is the first time I actually said the words "I'm a trans man" for college people. So that was something. Because usually what I do is that I just have a they them pronoun pin, and I take normally I don't really correct people. If they see it, they see it, but the people that do see it, they always have been respectful. I haven't really gotten any weird looks for the pin at all, but it does also matter on the fact that I don't verbally correct people, so there's that disconnect with that, I suppose. But it's been positive, really.
My experience at the college with this has largely been very positive. Literally, the only people who've given me like a hard time has been like students, because I understand, like, I do have very baby face, and there are times where I present very femininely, and they'll be like, "Oh, but like, are you sure?" Like how Sam had said, I'm like, "Yes, I am very, very sure." My teachers have largely been very accepting. There have been a couple times where I've had to like email them once or twice, like, "Hey, I told you in person. I would appreciate if you would listen to me." But after that, they usually get it. It's cool. Most of the time, I just brush it off instead of correcting people. But when I do correct people, I am very firm about it, and it tends to get the point across.
I'm glad that you shared all your stories with us. Connecting to what Oliver had just said, why? What's the meaning to you guys for your pronouns? Because there was a question in chat in regards to the meaning of the pronouns. Of course, we have non-binary and trans students here with us. What does that mean to you, being able to identify yourself or who you are? And excuse me, and what is the purpose of presenting yourself with your pronouns?
Well, I don't think anybody likes to be called something they're not. So pronouns is kind of like an indicator of someone's comfort zone, I feel. I was technically born female, but I do not identify as female at all. So I'm more comfortable being using they them pronouns because it kind of gives me the wiggle room where it's like, if I would like to look very masculine one day, or if I still would like to wear dresses and skirts and stuff like that, just because I'm wearing something that could be seen as more effeminate doesn't mean that I am female. And it really brings up the conversation of, okay, this is how this person is comfortable, so let me try and accommodate them in a certain way. So I think that's why I very like firmly am like, no, I use they them, and I'm very much very vocal. I think I'm the most vocal. Like, I correct a bunch of people when they use like she her, because I've just gone through so long of having to like swallow my pride and have people refer to me wrong. So I guess now I'm more adamant about it.
To sort of build on that, I sort of experienced the same thing where a lot of my newer friends and newer acquaintances know that I prefer she her, just out of respect to my more feminine side, which I've always been very drawn to as a child. Um, the reason why I have adopted they, them is for biological purposes. My body still has certain male characteristics, and it's kind of like a daily struggle, not daily struggle, but it is like an uphill battle to deal with constantly. And so accepting they them as a pronoun and non-binary as a marker allows me to feel freer from the social constructs of the gender binary, where I mean, my experience with my gender is still pretty binary. Um, I identify as feminine. I associate with feminine things. It's just how, you know, my innate nature. Um, my clothing options and how I present may sometimes either lean feminine to sort of androgynous. Um, but never do I ever want to be mistaken or seen as something masculine. And so when people refer to me with he, him pronouns, whether they don't know better or it's some sort of archaic form of identifying people based off of visual markers, I try to, just mainly for myself, present as feminine as possible because it's what I'm comfortable with. Um, but yeah, so that's sort of the meaning of the pronoun is just allowing the person who is going through, whether it's a transition or not, to know that their identity is being seen um, in that moment, and they're being seen for who they are expressing themselves as.
Just wanted to real quick add on to that. Even if you're not non-binary or trans, for me, I'm a cisgender pansexual, and I present my pronouns because of my friends who are non-binary and trans, and I want them to know that they're not experiencing this only because of who they are. It gives an opportunity to validate them for who they are and give them the chance to say, I am who I am. Everyone should accept it as it is. So even if you're not non-binary or trans, you can absolutely be yourself and say, hey, I'm firmly in my gender of he, him, or she, her, and I'm here to support.
Also, if I could add real quick, I see someone asked a question. What's a respectful way to ask a stranger their pronouns? Um, so I think the best way to do that is just normalizing the action or the act of asking people's pronouns. Over the summer, I was working briefly for this sort of art institution organization that was hiring a lot of trans or queer people in general. And, I found myself in a space where people were going by different pronouns. And, although someone might have looked one way, you weren't sure if they were in transition or not, or just, mask or femme presenting. And so in that environment, I actually found it rather normal for me just to bring up in natural conversation when I'm talking to them, it wouldn't be the first thing I'd be like, hey, what's your name? What's your pronouns? But as we were talking, I'd be like, hey, by the way, like, what are your preferred pronouns? Just so I'm aware. Because again, like everyone in this space was some sort of like queer identifying person. And so I feel like as a general society, we live in a world where cisgender people, people who identify with their sex assigned to them at birth, um, obviously with cisgender people, you don't have to necessarily ask what their pronouns are because usually our assumption is the correct one. And so I feel like moving forward, when we move into a space where we don't have that instant assumption of, oh, I see what this person is wearing or how they're presenting, I know what their pronouns are. Um, I think it would be just more inclusive, you know, in the midst of conversations. If you have the curiosity, obviously in a respectful way, just say, hey, by the way, you know, I just wanted to know what your preferred pronouns are, just so I didn't have a mistake or like a hiccup or anything. I think is the best way to go about that.
I want to add on top of that because I think a really nice way to kind of start the conversation, like say you're introducing yourself, like I would say, oh, hello, my name is Sam, like just so you know, I use they them pronouns. What pronouns would you prefer to use? Just so you know, we could start on a equal basis, and it's kind of a way of like being like, okay, so I'm here showing you respect, and I'm asking you to show me respect, and kind of that way. And I think as long as you go at it with the respect behind it, normally you'll be fine. It's really the people who are very much just trying to not be respectful is kind of, you know, when you're gonna get a hard time.
Yeah. And when I ask friends who are transitioning or non-binary, I always treat it as if I'm asking for their astrology sign. Like, oh, I'm a Cancer. What are you? Or, oh, you're a Scorpio. That's amazing. I have so many friends that are like that. Um, it's all about normalizing the way that you interact with people and just breaking down those, I guess, discomforts that come along with these conversations. But you'll see it'll be much easier when you do it that way. All right,
Also,
let's see here.
before we move on, just to add like real quick, um, I have a coworker who like I'm really good like friends with, you know, we don't have like a weird or a bad relationship. But he insists on calling me by masculine pronouns all the time. All the time. And so just as like a word of reference, if someone has mentioned their pronouns to you and you insist on calling them by the wrong pronouns, just don't do it. It's come to a point where like I'm typically not the person to correct someone when they like use wrong pronouns for me, but like with him, like I'll say something in kind of like a aggressive manner, but like joking as well, but also like, you know what I mean? Like I've mentioned it a number of times. So yeah, just try not be that person.
And it's different if like you just slip of the tongue kind
Right,
of
like
thing, like
mess
you're
up.
that's different. Like if you know the person's pronouns and we can always tell when you're really trying to use it correctly and be respectful. But if you're purposely like, it's like, oh, I know that they prefer to be called she her, but I'm gonna continue to call her he him, it basically feels like you're kind of denying us something, like it's kind of disrespectful, it feels at that point.
And so what I do, because I'm petty, is I'll call that person like, thank you, sis, if they're like, you know, man.
I also do that.
And they're always the first ones to be like, oh nah, I'm a bro, I ain't no sis. And I'm like, all right, well, sorry, I must have been confused.
I am also petty and I also do that.
Me too. Like I'll even do that like with my sisters or my dad. I'll be like, oh, and then she was like, and they'll be like, and I'm like, you don't like how it feels, do you? Just because we're petty as hell. But like not everybody's petty like that. A lot of people would just rather like just correct you and then move on with the conversation.
But it's also the fear sometimes.
Yeah.
Not at the college. I haven't had the fear of correcting someone at the college, which is a really nice open space, but
Yeah.
in everyday life, I have this fear that I'm going to correct the wrong person and I'm either going to get belittled or I'm going to be physically attacked. And that's terrifying, really,
Yeah.
sometimes. So I do appreciate like the college because they have like a no tolerance kind of policy for that kind of stuff, which is so nice. So I've never had to worry about that, but that is like outside this college bubble, that is a big fear that some people have.
Definitely. And if you do like slip up on someone's pronouns, just go, oh, sorry, and just say the actual pronoun that they use and move on with the conversation. It's okay if you like have a panic, but it's all right as long as you apologize, because we know people slip up. Like, it happens all the time. It's just a matter of apologizing and apologizing, meaning it, and moving on.
Also, don't make a big deal about it if you mess up, because that's just bringing more attention to the problem, and it's so much better if you're like, oh man, sorry, and then we just keep on with the conversation.
Yes.
It's okay to fumble, but don't put a spotlight on it.
Moving forward, I know that we talked briefly about how accommodating the college has been and how the staff here at Hudson have been really supportive with all our students. I just wanted to know any personal experiences any of you have with HCCC accommodating to meet your needs and the level of respect that you expect from the college.
Should I talk about how with the
Also-
name changing, when that got approved, I burst into tears?
Go for it, whatever you feel comfortable with.
Yeah, so yeah, we basically
That was last semester, right?
yeah, that was last
Yes,
semester.
it was.
Last
It was-
semester we went to that thing, and they passed the. My brain's in a fog right now. You two talk about it. I can't word.
Yeah, we all went together, the three of us.
Yeah.
We went together to I don't know what it's actually called. But where they have the meeting.
they're
Help us,
It was
please. We're so
What's it
sorry.
called?
I'm trying to let you all have the spotlight. It was the Board of Trustees meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Because
I remember actually
Veronica
coming-
is the best.
I remember coming in, I want to say it was maybe one of your first meetings of the semester to was it
Yeah.
February?
Yeah, it was the I think it was the
I think
first
so.
it was the first LGBTQ meeting.
Yeah, so
meeting,
that's
yeah.
probably February then, I would think, right? To let you all know that it was going to be discussed at the Board of Trustees meeting, which was happening a few hours after your meeting. And I mean, that was I almost wish I could have like videotaped that experience, because that's like one of those moments you want to like bottle up and keep forever. But even just coming and being able to share with everyone that this was happening,
Yeah.
it, had a great results. And then of course when you all went and it actually happened while you were there, I don't think I wasn't able to stay at the end when they actually voted, so I missed the bursting into tears.
Yeah,
But,
no,
Yeah.
it was just that moment of pure like happiness that like I guess I just started crying, because it wasn't just for me, but it was for like Cece and Stev and Oliver and just everyone. It was kind of that moment where it was like we are being seen, and it was
Yes.
such a reassuring thing, because
Yeah.
we have like the ability to have like the LGBTQ society and like stuff like that, but sometimes that's more of like student driven. So it was that wonderful moment of this institution sees us as people, and this institution wants us to be comfortable, and they want to kind of extend the metaphorical like olive branch to show that we are important like every other student, which was so nice.
no, and it's it's reality, it's the truth.
Yeah.
So the preferred name policy was agreed into existence, and we are working on the kind of like the back end stuff of what happens when you change the name in the system and where it leads from there. So we're very, very close to having that finalized and ready for action. I know Oliver submitted the form. We're testing it out, making sure when you submit it, it actually goes to the place it's supposed to go. But it will be really powerful, because Sam, you were saying before how with video conferencing now, classroom, it's kind of good in the classroom because you have your name up there and you can put that out there even before, like on the first day of class. But at the same time, your display name on your email is your dead name, the display name when you log into Portal, the display name when you're in Canvas. So there are definitely places where the name can be changed. Of course, there are some cases where it can't be changed, but for the most part, a lot of the outward facing identifying stuff will be changed to the chosen name that you submit in. to the college. So it's going to be really amazing.
I wanna add, because someone in the chat was saying that they were scared to tell their professors, and I understand. I have like a mini panic attack every time I have to have this conversation. But even though it is terrifying, and do what makes you feel comfortable. I'm not trying to like push you in any direction, but after I just have that like slight conversation with any professor, 9 times out of 10, I've only had that one time experience where it went badly, but 9 times out of 10, they will, I'll go up to them and I'll be like, hey, just wanted to let you know, I prefer to be called Sam. I know there's a different name on the thing. And then instantly they're just on the ball. They're like, oh, okay, that's cool. What pronouns do you want me to use? So I know you're comfortable. Like, they're normally already kind of up to task. And then the one time I had the really negative response, I went right away to like an advisor, and I talked about it, and they put me in the direction of the right people, and I reported that professor because and this was me giving that professor like a couple opportunities, but like they continued to kind of basically just not listen to me and make me feel very uncomfortable. And so I reported them, and I don't know if they still work at the college, but I know that they were dealt with in like a way, and he tried to be nicer to me after that, I guess, because he got in trouble. Yeah, so.
Yeah, I feel like I totally understand your fear, because like honestly, you're further along in your transition than I am. Congratulations on getting on testosterone. Especially because I don't present very masculinely. I don't pass very well. I am typically a bit more scared to have that conversation. But I found the easiest way to do that is to email the professor, and then if like they still say something, or like if you fear that they didn't see your email, talk to them after class, and like 9 times out of 10 they'll be totally chill. And like I feel like people here at the college are very understanding and very like open-minded with this kind of thing. Like back in high school, much more scared. Here I'm chilling, and like I feel like the staff here are incredibly like open-minded compared to other places. And I'm very happy that like especially just like colleges in general nowadays are more chill about that stuff.
I think once the chosen name, preferred name changes happen, it will be even better, because a lot of times I would assume that the misnaming or misgendering is because your display name on your email says something, and it may be the first email that the professor's gotten from you, or, those kind of display impacts. So I would think it's going to become an even easier process as well. And then, of course, and then it'll be up to you as a student, how much do you even need to divulge? If your name is changed on your email and on Canvas and on the roster, there may not even be a need for that conversation. But, everybody will be at different points in their life and different comfort levels.
I just want to take a quick moment just to say, I see that there's a bunch of student leaders and students in this meeting right now. I highly encourage you, even if you're not a part of the queer community, absolutely join the LGBTQIA plus club as an opportunity to hear these stories. Believe it or not, these experiences that these students have don't just occur on this meeting, it occurs throughout their entire lives. So if you're interested in learning more and hearing each of these wonderful students and their stories beyond just this one meeting, definitely drop your student email in the chat, and I'll absolutely make sure that it gets sent to the right people, so you know what the future events are. And
I was gonna
to
say, I think
Elijah,
the right people are here.
exactly.
I was gonna say,
sent.
I was like, our current president is a wonderful human being.
And I think another thing with that, not only is it that the staff here at Hudson are so accommodating and so supportive of our students, the student leaders as well. You have a great support of people that will help guide you and keep you I want to say safe, help encourage you and uplift you no matter what position you are in your transition. So absolutely join, have that support group, and we'll love to have you join us. All right. All right, another question from the chat. How can mental health counseling and wellness be more supportive? I know that in the queer community, mental health is a really big topic for all of us. And it's the idea that we're trying our best to find those outlets of support. I know plenty of people who are queer or trans and non-binary who don't feel comfortable reaching out to a therapist or don't feel comfortable making the first step to speak with a counselor. So what are your thoughts on this, on mental health support?
I'm very pro mental health. I think everyone should talk about their feelings. I feel like it's the kind of sense, it's the atmosphere. If it feels like a welcoming enough atmosphere, you will get people to come and like talk and things of that nature. And a lot of the time we really just want someone to listen without being corrected. We want to be able to say like, hey, today I felt uncomfortable because I got stared at going into this specific bathroom, and I just want to talk about how that made me feel. And then once they're able to talk about it, I think that helps a lot of the pressure that we feel, because a lot of people who are trans and non-binary or different in any, I guess, way, we feel very alone, and we feel like we can't talk about a lot of stuff. And even if we find other people, because I'm very good friends with my other panelists, even though we find other people who are kind of similar to us, we all go through things very differently. And so we still feel, even though we know people are there, people are there to understand, we still feel kind of alone, because it's like, am I overreacting? Is this a big deal? So it is just nice to have someone to just sit and listen.
Yeah, and in being trans, a lot of us tend to have the experience of somebody trying to like say that they know more than we do, that they're like they try to correct us and be like, oh, but you're not really, or like, oh, are you sure? And that the fear of having that conversation does extend to potential like therapists or psychiatrists or mental health counselors and such, because we don't know everyone's viewpoints, and we have massive fear of people who are supposed to help us being the ones to be like to invalidate us. And that's why transphobia is a big problem in like medical fields and in like the therapy circles and all that. So that's another reason that we tend not to reach out, is because we always fear that the person that is supposed to try to help us is going to act like they know more about our brain than we do. And it's a big thing that I feel like can't disappear quickly, because it's just such a commonplace thing that we have to like deal with and like learn to, as people in general, be like, not everybody is going to act like that, but we still have to be wary. And it sucks.
It's
but
also a scary time right now, because in the government, we can get denied medical treatment because of who we are. And so it's been a really hard time for the community right now, because so many things are either in the process of being taken away, or they have been taken away. And I actually had to go get a flu shot recently, and the survey questions that they had were very much indicating that it felt like if I answered these questions about my sexuality or my gender identity wrong, I could be turned away from receiving a flu shot during a pandemic. And it's terrifying. that I have to feel like I have to lie sometimes to medical professionals just to be treated. And so, and I think that's a big strain on like people right now.
Oh, Cece. Yeah,
Oh,
go.
well, I was just going to add that a lot of being trans is a lot of contradiction, because like I myself am 100% willing to fight the dysphoria. I will willingly fist fight the dysphoria of my friends. 100%. I will fist fight them in the parking lot of the Denny's. But when it comes to my own, she ain't gonna be fought. I cannot fight her. And it's just that contradiction that we have a lot, you know, that we're willing to say, oh, this trans person is who they are and they want to be referred to this way, but they also, like, for example, if someone wants to be a trans man, but they want to have their hair long, they want to paint their nails, they still want to have, you know, skirts and stuff. I'm 100% able to say, yeah, that's just a trans man wanting to look nice. But if I try to do this exact same thing, I'm automatically, but aren't you supposed to be a guy? Aren't, like, just like perpetrating all of these like gender conforming things that don't necessarily apply, that I logically know don't have to apply, because it's just how society has made us form our little brains. And that's also a thing that therapists will have to look out for, that we logically know it makes no sense, but we still can't fight it in a sense. Like, it's just very hard for us to like beat that out of our mental state. So just be patient. We know we shouldn't be thinking this way, but it's hard.
Yeah, it does normally feel like it's like one step forward, three steps back situation. Oh, and I think it's the worst because you mentioned dysphoria. I think it's the worst because a lot of people are like, oh, like you're trans, therefore you should just go get the surgery. Average people don't realize how hard it is to get the surgery to transition. Like you have to get a psychological evaluation. You have to get approved by different medical professionals. You have to find a doctor who specializes in what they do, and most insurances do not cover it at all. And so you have to pay it out of pocket, which is like thousands of dollars that most people do not have at the time. So, you know, like, even though we're like, yes, I am confident in like how I want to be perceived, it's still that notion of I can't afford to make myself the way I view myself. And when people just constantly nag at you, it's like, oh, well, you're doing this wrong because you're supposed to be this. It's very emotionally draining.
I also feel like the idea of the surgery is such a big like misnomer, because a lot of transness revolves around the idea of cisgenderness, and so a lot of the concepts are, how can I as a trans person correlate to my cis counterpart? And a lot of the times our ideology of what is normal is based in cisgender heterosexual normativity. And essentially what all that term relates to is the idea that men are men, women are women, and men belong with women. And so this is a concept that I've had a lot of struggles with early on in my transition. And as I progress with my transition, I even sort of, it shifts in my mind. So before I started hormones, I was very much on the boat that, you know, trans people don't need to be on hormones to be trans. You don't need surgery to be trans. You know, as long as you don't need to present. Anyway, I have my own like ideology of like transness transgenderism, even though I hate the term, transgenderness. And so, you know, I've been on hormones for about a year, give or take, and I've been seeing changes, and I can sort of see how my mind is segueing to the realm of transmedicalism, where I look at other trans feminine people and I'm like, oh sweetie, you're not on hormones, you don't present feminine, you're not a woman. And like that doesn't help the conversation or other trans people, because again, I was once in a position where I was like, oh, I don't need hormones and I don't need surgery, you know, to be transgender. I feel like the best way to transition is take it in steps, take it in stride, and be able to do things that alleviate one's dysphoria. That doesn't make them feel self-conscious or awkward um, about their transition or their transgender status. For instance, doing the whole virtual learning and trying to interact with other students online is very difficult for me, where I've literally just subtracted myself from the equation, because yes, on Zoom and on WebEx, I can change my name. But if students need to get back to me, I can't give them my personal email. I have to give them my Hudson email. But then my Hudson email has my dead name, which I've been trying to get changed over. It's just the whole process is taking too long, where I'm just like, you know what, girl, just, you know, perhaps it's not for me. And so there's different things, and I've thought that, not that I was, you know, completely cured of my dysphoria, but I'm a very social person. You know, I like being around people because I can introduce myself, you know, tell them what my, you know, tell them about me, and then just keep it pushing. But via virtual world, a lot of, excuse me, a lot of my dysphoric tendencies were coming back, where, you know, on certain apps I present very femininely, but then I don't have the most feminine voice. Um, you know, like I need to make sure I'm camera ready, and even though I'm not camera ready right now, um, you know, there's a lot of like, how can I alleviate my dysphoria? And so I think that's one thing that's important to keep in mind, that not all trans people present the way that they identify for whatever reason. Not all trans people are on hormones for whatever reason. Not all trans people have had a list of surgeries, like a checklist, for whatever reason. And that should still make their experience valid for what it is. So I just wanted to get that off my chest when I heard about like the surgery.
Yeah, I just, as someone who's non-binary, I don't have a checklist, a theoretical checklist I could follow, because I don't fall in between like the binary. Like I sometimes I'm kind of jealous of like Oliver, because he was like, I went from this and I'm going to this, and he has like a line, it feels like. But for me, it's kind of like a pie chart of like, how do I feel today? And it's the sense where it's like, okay, well, I don't want to completely transition because I don't see myself as a man, but I don't want to stay the way I am because I don't see myself as female either. And so I have to constantly tell myself this, because when you're non-binary, you try to be as androgynous as possible. And so you feel like you're failing as a non-binary person when you're not androgynous. Like if somebody looks at you and like has that moment of, oh, what could they be? Like you feel like you failed. And so I constantly have to tell myself the mantra, I do not owe anyone my androgyny, because I don't, if I feel like wearing a sundress because it's like 89 degrees outside, but you know, I still don't want to be perceived as like feminine even though I'm wearing a sundress. Like that doesn't change anything. It's just this whole, we built our whole society on being like blue is for boys, pink is for girls, like kind of ideal, and I don't fit in it at all. And it's terrifying, because then I feel very like disjointed. And I went through a really long time. This is actually how Oliver and I became friends, because we sat down and had the conversation, and I talked to him about it, and I was like, I don't feel valid enough to say that I'm trans, because I do not want the things that like quote unquote trans people should want. And it made me feel like, because I was in the sense where I was like, I don't want to disrespect you for using the same terminology. And that's still something I'm working through. It's not something that just goes away like magically. You don't magically figure it out, but you kind of treat it as like a day by day thing, and you try to make, you know, life as easy for yourself as possible.
Yeah, when Sam and I had that very long conversation about like their validity, I do sometimes have to remind them of this, that you can identify as trans being non-binary, because trans is an umbrella term. Literally, just if you do not identify with the gender you were assigned at birth, you are trans. And that includes non-binary, that includes gender non-conforming, that includes agender, that includes whatever else. As long as you do not identify with the gender you were assigned at birth, you are trans. And there is no like, oh, this person is more valid than this person or whatever, because gender in general is just such a crazy, like, wavy, stupid thing, that the idea that we have to like fight over what is and is not valid is insane to me. And like, people experience gender in different ways. Like, personally for me, I only plan on going on testosterone and getting top surgery. I do not have any dysphoria with like downstairs. I don't want to get bottom surgery. And I know some people, some other trans men who don't even plan on getting top surgery or going on hormones, because they feel valid enough and their dysphoria is little enough that they don't feel it necessary to have to go through all of that just to fit in the box that cisgender heteronormative patriarchal society tries to put you into. Like, you do not have to go on hormones to be valid as a trans person. You do not have to get surgery to be valid as a trans person. All you need to do is be who you are as a trans person to be valid, because everybody experiences it differently. There are so many different types of dysphoria. There are so many different ways that people alleviate their dysphoria. And the idea that like, oh, you are a trans woman, so you must do XYZ is like, no, screw off, let me do what I want, you know?
Then there's also fellow trans people who could be transphobic, because transphobia is not just for non-trans people. I have met a couple of people who identified as trans who looked at me and said, you are not valid because you do not fall under this category. I've had like full arguments with people who are also in the community who are basically like, no, like, you don't get to claim this because you're this. And it's very disheartening, because you would think that because we were all kind of going through similar things and we're all in this community kind of together, you would think that we would be able to help each other. But sometimes it could be more hurtful to have someone who's also going through the thing you're going to tell you you are not valid, because then you have so much doubt inside yourself that you're like the constant questions. Am I doing this for attention? Do I really feel this way? Am I just confused? Like that negativity just eats away at you for so long. And so that's why it is really important to kind of try to find, you know, your tribe. It's good to find people who will be like, no, you are valid and what you're thinking is normal, and you can have people just be like, take your time and figure out who you are in your own time. Because I think the worst thing is to try to have someone like rush their decisions in this. Because I don't think, I've never met someone who is trans that's regretted the things that they've done, but I've met some people that are like, I wish I didn't have I wish I didn't feel the need to have done this so quickly so I could have explored who I am more.
One thing I wanted to add to that, I definitely agree with you when you said, you know, you don't owe anybody your androgynous as being non-binary. One thing that I have noticed and experienced, you know, although to be transgender is to be sort of in this unified existence, I do also believe that everyone's transition is very different. And not to say that, you know, not to say that that gives one transgender person the right to belittle someone else's transition, because it's not. But for instance, coming from the ballroom scene, which is not to get into the long history, a lot of ballroom in New York City during the 90s and the 80s and 70s was an outlet for a lot of Black and Latino transgender people and just gay, you know, gay people in general to have an outlet for themselves. And within the ballroom scene, when they weren't at balls and they were back on the street in New York, a lot of the trans girls had to reach this height of femininity, which they called realness, in order to leave the ball, return home safely. And so I entered ballroom as a little baby gay and a baby tran, and I thought, you know, I identify this way, I should be able to walk this category. And you know, I got my little booty up on stage and I walked in front of judges, in front of an entire theater of a lot of people too, mind you. And the commentator stopped me and said, "Sweetie, you're not a femme queen." And I said, "Mm-hmm." And he said, "No." And I said, "Mm-hmm." What I didn't realize at the time was that there are certain stages and certain levels to certain things. At the time, I wasn't on hormones. I just had a love for ballroom and I wanted to be a part of it. But I wasn't a part of a house. I didn't have a ballroom family. And so navigating it was very different. Now that I have started hormones myself, my transition is very different from, let's say, a trans feminine person or a trans woman who hasn't started hormones, because she isn't going through the physiological changes that I'm undergoing. Same thing with trans women who have, you know, been on hormones for years and have had surgeries and are living an experience of the trans spectrum that I have not yet faced. Again, I don't believe it's right for someone to disclaim anyone's transgender identity, but I do feel like it is sort of a fair assessment to say that my transness is different from someone else's, and not in a belittling way, just in a way that acknowledges the fact that, again, as people, we're all different and we all have different walks of life. But I have a friend who has just started hormones about 4 months ago, and she calls me, you know, to talk about like her hormone regimen and things like that. That's something I would have never been able to do if I've never been on hormones myself. You know, I'm telling her information, ask your doctor about this, talk to him about this, because I need to do my own research about what I'm putting in my body. Because yes, I can blindly go to a doctor and say, you know, I would like to start hormone replacement therapy, but there's been one systematic way of doing hormone treatment that I feel like as one of the girls, I need to know what I'm putting in my body. And if I can share that information along with other, you know, baby trans, then that is definitely something to acknowledge and take note of. But yeah, so I do feel like there are sort of different types of transness, and I do feel like with that comes different experiences.
Real quick, I know that we went a little bit over schedule, but I just want to say thank you guys for your time joining us. Real quick, I know that there are a few faculty members that are with us along with student leaders. And if you could just real quick, if there's one thing you want to tell these student leaders and these faculty members who will share this with their colleagues, what is it that you want them to know about in regards to your identity and how they can improve the lives of other people? Because ultimately, this is an opportunity for others in the future to look back and say, this is what our college is doing, and here's how we can improve upon what we have already. So just one thing that you think the faculty or future student leaders should know about being trans or non-binary.
I guess really just be open to people. I feel like if you're welcoming and open to people, they'll want to they'll open up to you and they'll share their experiences, because at the end of the day, we're all just people. We're all just human beings. You know, we all go through different things that, you know, we all have our own struggles. Um, and really, like, you can just listen and be like empathetic to an extent. And I think like just being treated as normal people, not making a big deal about, you know, even though this whole panel is about, you know, like non-binary and trans people talking, if we're just treated like normal people and not like a prop or, you know, to fill a quota, it it makes life a lot easier, I think.
Yeah, I agree with Sam on all that. It's just treat us with the same respect you would treat anybody else. Like the only thing I could think of that would be like do this specifically is normalize certain conversations, normalize preferred name conversations, normalize pronoun conversations. Just make that something you do in your life for anybody, regardless if they're cis or trans or whatever, because it's something that should be destigmatized in general.
And if you're like a professor or or something similar, just normalizing the icebreaker of pronouns, because like a lot of teachers, what they would do in like the classroom settings, that we would go around with whatever introduction the professor wanted us to do, and to just like include pronoun in there, just like slip it on in it, just to help normalize it, because that's like the biggest thing with like with transness. It's just normalizing like pronouns, and just like the method of just asking for them, because it's just another question. It's just, what's your major, what's your pronouns, you know, it's just something that is just a question that can be asked. It's just a matter of just making it more normal.
So with that, I am going to stop the recording, but we are going to continue with open Q&A for anybody who wants to. Thank you so much to our panelists and to our moderators, and for anybody who's watching this after the fact. Yay.